Hi there, Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. Thank you for watching Brother Be Well's Youth Substance Youth Prevention Series, supported by Elevate Youth California, funded through Proposition 64.
I have been addicted to caffeine, so I'm not ignoring the fact that you can be addicted to caffeine, but yeah, I don't think it's the same thing. What do y'all think? Let's start there. We're already rolling. Is it really? I mean, some people view, like we were talking about it that earlier, that party of mine, you're sitting around now, that didn't used to be the case. You used to go into a back room to kind of smoke a joint and hide that. Now it's legal. I was at a stoplight today and my window was down and a cloud blew in. The guy in the car next to me was smoking weed. And so now it's so prevalent. What are y'all's thoughts about how prevalent it is, and it might be leading to a larger number of people that wind up either in Joseph's office or an office of a mental health clinician, or they're at the doctor's office? What do y'all think? Is it something we need to be even more concerned about today than we were yesterday?
I can go, but yeah, that's a kind of weird analogy when you said it, when your friend said that you compared weed to caffeine, but when you look back on it, I'm like, it's true because it's more accessible. Anyone can do it, use it, and in some cases you can get it prescribed by a doctor. And so I think it's one of those things where you have to realize that this is like an extremely accessible drug to everyone. Everyone can use it. There's a variety of way to do it, like different forms, like you eat it, or just like the generally smoking and stuff like that, or different types of ways of smoking it. So it's I feel like we should be concerned because there's so many different outlets for it now than there ever was, and there probably just end up being more and more and more as it continues.
Yeah. We keep it real here, Brother Be Well. We're talking about marijuana use and addiction. And so let's maybe just ask a quick question for those of us who are comfortable. I'm certainly comfortable. Show of hands if you have used or are using marijuana on a regular basis. So most of us have, at the very least, four out of six. So even in this room, so 2/3 of the people here have used marijuana. And I know this isn't a scientific, that's not a scientific survey, but if you think 2/3 of the American population now, or the state of California, we're coming out of California, is legal here. If I thought 2/3 of all legal adults are using cannabis, that's a scary number. Joseph, are you a little disturbed by that?
Yes, based on the science there's more and more science coming out as it becomes more prevalent, and it's easier to conduct controlled studies and longitudinal studies. So yeah, it's definitely concerning. Just to drop a little bit of science and research, we're seeing more and more research coming out that's showing a correlation between early onset schizophrenia and early substance use or marijuana or cannabis use. So that's concerning. We know that there is a correlation between short-term memory loss, long-term memory functioning in marijuana use. So when we're seeing, just in our group, 2/3, and I could speak for the state of California as of a couple of years ago, we were seeing about 30 to 50% of high school students confirming active use of marijuana. So it doesn't look like it's going anywhere, but there's definitely a psychological and physical health concern.
And I almost wish we had one of our nurses, one of the Capital City Black Nurses Association, that they could chime in on how it affects the body. You've already touched on a little bit how it affects the brain, Joseph. You mentioned schizophrenia. Some people might not know what that is. Can you define that really quickly? What are we talking about when we say early onset schizophrenia?
So early onset schizophrenia is, well, let me talk about schizophrenia a little bit. It's typically characterized, considered a psychotic disorder where you develop hallucinations and delusions and hear like auditory things, and it's almost kind of like an out of body, not in reality experience. And the early onset piece of that that we're seeing the connection to in folks that are using marijuana in their teens, early adolescence, young adulthood, is where I mean, we don't know if it's catapulting it or if it's something that they're predisposed to, but it's happening at earlier ages than what we would typically see in the normal population. And that's where we're seeing that connection between, okay, folks that are using marijuana and they're developing, schizophrenic symptoms and even a full-blown schizophrenic disorder in their mid-20s, early 30s, when otherwise they may not have if there wasn't some marijuana use.
And just to be clear, Joseph, schizophrenia tends to show up at about that age range. So are we saying it's showing up earlier, or
Yes.
more people are having it, or both?
Both. Yep, showing up earlier, and more folks are presenting with it. One of the things that, and not to take over the whole deal, but I think it's important for us to understand too that we're seeing different marijuana, we're seeing different cannabis, different potencies out there. Where I think one of the most recent studies showed that it's up to 20 times more potent than it was in the 60s and 70s. So it's not the same thing that we were seeing before, where you may see people that have been, lifelong smokers, smoking weed, smoking joints, and you're not seeing the same types of symptoms. Whereas we're seeing, much stronger strains being out there, and the types of weed that people are smoking, that it's creating a much more significant issue.
You read my mind, Joseph, and we're going to pull our young people in just 1 second, but you read my mind. We learned from Roland Williams over the summer during our Youth Substance Use Prevention Academy about the strength of cannabis today compared to past generations. And it reminded me, when I was in college, I tried weed for the first time, and it had no effect on me at all. I was the unlucky guy. I didn't get the munchies. Friends of mine would smoke a couple joints, and then they're ordering pizza and going crazy and laughing and whatever. It had no effect on me at all. So fast forward a few decades, I didn't think much about cannabis being legal, because I said, I must need quite a lot. I had one edible that was a little too strong for my constitution. Dudes, I was out. I couldn't have driven. I couldn't walk down the street. And that's when I began to realize this is a whole different kind of cannabis than what past generations used to deal with. I want to pull our young people in, because a couple of y'all, at the very least, 3 of you, I believe, said you had done this before. So one of you that either has used or used, why don't you talk about it a little bit through the lens of addiction? How close, if you're comfortable talking about it, did you find yourself developing a dependence or an addiction on this drug? I talked to another young person over the weekend, and she says she uses it as a regular sort of wind down. If she's had a hard day, she doesn't do cardio like I do. I jump on my bike and wear myself out. She reaches for a joint, and that was a red flag for me. If you're learning to manage stress from, we're all stressed with our work days or school, but if you on a regular basis are managing that with a substance, that was a flag for me. One of you that has used cannabis a little bit, talk a little bit about how you used it and how close you may or may not have come to addiction.
I can go. So growing up, I usually just did it occasionally, like at parties or at events. But once the pandemic happened, I tend to start using it a lot more because there was not a lot to do, right? Everything was shut down, closed down. But 2020, I became like a heavy marijuana smoker. 2021, I started trying to get out that habit, started going to the gym, working and other things because things started opening up. But I tend to smoke a lot more during the summer because things are nice, right? People are like smoking a lot more during the summer than the winter.
Mm-hmm.
I tend not to like smoke back to back or be addicted to it as much as like before, like in 2020,
Yeah, and you mentioned 2020, so can we assume it was related to COVID?
Yes.
Yeah, we all developed habits, I think, that maybe we could have found better habits. I just talked to somebody who learned a language during the shelter-in-place orders. She learned how to speak Italian during shelter-in-place. And I thought, well, I did edibles and M&Ms. I was eating my way through COVID, and I was dealing with it in different ways. And wow, what if I'd have taken that time and done something really productive? So I think a lot of us did that during COVID. Somebody else that's used cannabis before, talk about how close you may or may not have come to forming a dependence on this thing.
I can go. For me, I think I first started it with one of my old roommates. So we were roommates for 2 years. That first year, he didn't smoke anything. I didn't smoke anything either. I remember I didn't try alcohol. Didn't have my own bottle of alcohol until I was in college. After I was 21, so I was never in the habit of like using or drinking alcohol. And then he comes in the next year that we go back to the dorm, and then he's like smoking now, and then he's telling me, hey, do you want to like come outside with me and smoke? And then I always said no, it's not my thing. But I was curious in a way. So like everyone, like how you said, Michael, like you didn't smoke until or didn't have an edible until you were in college. I just wanted to have like that thing, like, oh, I did it. I know if I like it. I know if I don't. But so I ended up like going with him one day. We did smoke like one joint that he had, but after that, I didn't feel like it was my thing. So it's like sodas. I remember as a kid, I used to finish like a 3 liter soda maybe in like one day or a day and a half, maybe like that. It wasn't too hard for me. So I used to drink a lot of soda, a lot of sweets, and then now I see a soda and then I don't feel like I need it. It's like nothing that I would like crave for. It's nothing that I would go for in the fridge. If I had other options like water, juice, anything else, something healthier, I would grab the other options. So I feel like addiction for me, um, I don't really get it doesn't really get to me either in alcohol or any other substances because of once we did it that one time, I was always like, this is not my thing. It doesn't catch my attention. So I'll just leave it on its own on the side by itself, never touch it.
Right. Do you have, Axel, are there any if you don't mind disclosing, do you have anyone that struggles with addiction in your family?
In my family, no, but I do know like acquaintances from like high school or outside or friends from college, and they might not accept that it's an addiction, but it's like how you said, like going home after work, after being tired, get to relax, they go for a joint, they go like take a dab of their pen or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, instead of like going to the gym or watching TV, reading a book, anything, any other options.
Yeah, and I'm gonna ask you a question related to this in 1 second, Joseph. The reason I asked Axel about if there was a member of your family, we know that addiction, there's a familiar link between us and addiction. Is that correct, Joseph? If we got an addict in our family, we're more predisposed to addiction. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate, and it's accurate for a number of reasons. We know there's a genetic predisposition, which is when someone may be more prone to addiction genetically. The other thing when it comes to family, though, is what do the influences look like? What's being modeled for you? And then and it may not necessarily mean that young people are watching family members growing up using drugs or smoking or drinking, but it could also be how are they learning to cope with what's going on in the family? And then if drugs and alcohol is a way that they're observing peers or other family members being able to manage, intense emotions or trauma, then that could create another link or another layer of a risk factor.
Yeah, that's what exactly read my mind again. That's exactly what I was going to get at. Valentin, you mentioned your father was an alcoholic. Mine was too. And so I learned, and I think I'm going to share with you guys. I know we're talking about marijuana, but I got very, very close to becoming an alcoholic because I think some would argue that it's in my genes, and it might be, probably is. But I realized, thank God, through therapy that I had watched my father manage stress with alcohol. And I didn't even realize I was picking that up as a habit. Valentin, you're a parent, you know this. Joseph, you're a parent as well. So some of us have children. Our kids, they watch everything. And even when they don't think you're watching, they're watching. And I would even argue that with peer groups, we pick up habits from peers that we don't even really realize. And then before you know it, you're doing a vape pipe or you're smoking a joint or you've dabbled in edibles, and you got to really be careful and make sure you're not leaning into that substance in an unhealthy way any more than you would any other substance. So any comments about that or any firsthand experiences with any of that? How about you, Eric? We haven't heard much from you today, Eric, uncharacteristically. What do you think about that point?
it's you do pick up habits, is what I was like. You surround yourself with people and you be with them long enough, you'll pick up some things. You'll notice that you started to, I don't know, let's say your friend influences you to wake up early, so you notice you wake up early more, stuff like that. But in terms of substance like abuse and stuff like that, you can definitely be influenced by that. My family's filled with it's mainly pot smokers, and some of them drink, and I've just been like, surrounded by that at a young age. And you know thankfully I haven't picked it up as a habit, but I know some family members who have, and they've picked up drinking, they've picked up smoking, and sometimes they even smoke together as like, when they get to family gatherings, they roll one up or they drink. And it's kind of like it's sad to see that you're predisposed to it as well. But it's just like, if you surround yourself with a bunch of things, you'll just eventually fall into the hole. And sometimes you can't get out, but sometimes you can. It's just kind of, it's sad to see like family members go through that, or friends as well. And sometimes habits can be good and sometimes habits can be bad that you pick up.
They can be. And I don't mean to pick on you, but I got a follow-up question for you, Eric, because we talked about family members and picking up habits. You said you've got family members, that a lot of family members, I think you just said, that use cannabis, use marijuana. You haven't done that. How and why do you think you've done that? Because you might have the key. We've got one of these, you speaks about peer pressure. I don't think, we didn't talk about familiar pressure. As strong as peer pressure could be, someone in your family could be having an influence on you, positive and negative, and you don't even realize it. So can you dig a little deeper? Why do you think you didn't succumb to that same habit that so many people in your direct circle were? People were smoking, and you haven't done that.
I can't really like, sit here and say like, oh, I did it because, I really wanted to do it. I did have a feeling that I wanted to do it. So I can't, say that, oh, I just knocked it off the entire time. But as to the reason why I didn't fall to it, I honestly, I saw what it did, and I just knew that I didn't want to turn out that way. Like, also another thing too, smoking weed, when it comes to that, it's expensive. So I knew I just didn't want to dish out the money to do that constantly, because I know addiction can be expensive. So that's one of the things that I saw, because you would see like how much money they're spending on it, or they're spending on it daily. And it's just something that I just never wanted to do. As to why I never did it, multiple factors, but at the end of the day, I just frankly don't know.
That's a good point, though. We haven't touched on that. A marijuana habit, or addiction, or dependence, or wherever you're at in that spectrum, can be expensive. One of those young people I just told you guys about, I'm mentoring. I'm one of her mentors. She told me she spends $300 a month on cannabis. That surprised me, because this is the same person who will talk about, I don't have money for this, I don't have money for that, and I'm so broke. And I'm not making light of it, but I thought, you spend $300 a month on this substance that it seems you're addicted to. Any comments about that? Does it surprise anybody else? Am I not on the street? I don't know how much that stuff costs, I guess, huh?
It tends to add up after a while. Like me myself, I wouldn't do it for the same reasons, because like I didn't have money like that growing up. So I tend to stay away from it. Like when people will offer me, sometimes I'll say yes, sometimes I'll say no. But like for myself, like I tended to, I started hustling in high school, right? Because I didn't have like money coming in any way from my family or anything. So like, don't get high off your own supply is kind of like what I lived by during high school.
Don't get high off your own supply. That's easy to remember. Appreciate you sharing that, Valentin. Before we gotta take off here, Joseph, a question for you. I saw an article that talked about the link between stress and anxiety and cannabis use, and there was a whole section of the article where these young people talked about the pressures in their own life. I talked about that young person that I know that was stressed during the day, and then she felt like that helped her calm down. This was an article that said a lot of young people, and older people even, are depending on, or looking to rather, cannabis to help them manage anxiety. You're a mental health clinician, a licensed marriage and family therapist. Can you maybe suggest to us another way or two to manage anxiety that wouldn't be turned into a joint or to an edible?
That's going to be dependent on the person. one of the sad truths about that is that it's a very short-term relief that in turn increases your anxiety and stress levels. Chemically and physiologically, that's what's happening. Is you're putting it in your body, and there's this temporary relief, so you're high. But as soon as that high goes away, what ends up happening is you're more susceptible to increased levels of anxiety and stress. So that's one of the things that I encourage people to understand is the more you do it, the more you're going to increase the likelihood that you're going to have even more severe anxiety and stress. So some very simple strategies, and some of the guys here I know have talked about some of the ones they've used for other things in their life is exercise. Finding activities that you enjoy engaging in. Definitely the people in your circle are going to have a heavy influence. One of our other topics, we talked about peer pressure and the positive peer pressure. Finding things that are healthy activities, whether it's a physical, psychological. Some people may be against it, but I think video games, I've worked with a lot of folks that's saved their life. So activities that are stimulating, that you enjoy, it could be nature, going for walks. There's so many things, and I think people don't give enough things a try to see what's going to work. And you also have to have an arsenal. You can't just be one thing that's going to be your saving grace. You got to have some more tools in your tool belt. If you don't feel like going for a walk, if that's an effective thing, then what's something that you can do inside? And having, kind of an array of different activities that you can engage in that are enjoyable, that ultimately are distracting you from managing stress or anxiety in an unhealthy way.
And don't lead to have absolutely no chance of leading to any type of addiction. That's a great final tip of yours, Joseph, having an arsenal. For me, swimming. So when the weather's warm, Valentin, you were talking about you tend to smoke more in the summer, pop more in the summer. If it's warm, if I can go swimming and get in water, that'll alleviate all the anxiety. Well, here, once it gets cool and I can't be in the pool or at the beach or whatever, I have to work to make that pivot. So we got to come up with things to help us manage that, whatever issue is leading us. It might not be anxiety, but whatever is leading us to want to over imbibe maybe in cannabis or pot, we got to find other ways to manage that. Almost out of time, so y'all know how I like to throw it to the youth for some final thoughts. First, Joel, let's start out with you. What's the, you got 30 seconds for if somebody's watching this and they're thinking about, maybe they're a casual marijuana user, maybe they're just thinking about it. What would you have to say to somebody who is looking to begin a journey with cannabis based on maybe what you know from the Summer Institute?
Yeah, I would say don't let other people or friends influence you, and definitely just let your body fully develop before you decide to experiment with anything.
Love it. Thank you, sir. How about you, Valentin?
I'll say you're the one that controls, so don't let it control you. And just be smart about the decisions you make, because it not only does it affect you, but it affects the ones around you.
Really love that. Always think to somebody else. How about you, Axel? Any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, I would say stay away from it as long as you can. But if you can't, as Valentin said, don't let it be in control of you. You be the one in control of it so you don't fall into addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And Erick, we'll wrap with you from the youth perspective.
Make sure that, like Joel said, let your body fully develop. And at the end of the day, if your body doesn't react well to it, don't force it. Don't try to think you can do it, or don't fall into the trends of, oh, I have to do it. Just, if it's not for you, it's not for you. And just make sure that at the end of the day, you stay safe. And as Axel and Valentin said, don't let it control you.
And if I can continue that, Erick, don't be crazy enough, present company included. If the joint, if it doesn't affect you, don't smoke 3 more joints to try to get high. Maybe that's the universe trying to tell you it's not for you. So if I could go back to that younger version of myself, I'd say, you're not missing out on much. You can figure out another way to enjoy the rest of your day. Axel, Valentin, Joel, Erick, really want to thank y'all, 4 of our youth from Brother Be Well. I want to thank you for your time. And Joseph Mealy with HearU.org, our mental health clinician for the day. Thank y'all, guys. Really appreciate it. And I want to thank you for checking this video out, this You Speak video. If you've enjoyed it, if you've been intrigued, if you want to hear more about this topic or any one of a number of behavioral health topics, go to brotherbewell.com. While you're there, we're a membership supported service, so join as a member. It's free. Sign up for our blog. All we need is your email address. Become a part of the Brother Be Well family at brotherbewell.com. My name is Michael P. Coleman, Content Director for Brother Be Well. I want to thank you for being with us. 3 quick things I'm asking you to do. Take care of yourself, take care of somebody else, and come back soon. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, good afternoon. My name is Michael Betlock. I'm 19. I live in Clovis, California. I go to college out in Sacramento, Sac State. And this summer with Brother Be Well it's been life-changing, man. You know, whether it's the topics that we hear about on mental health and substance abuse, which has taught me a lot. You know, there's certain drugs that we talked about that I really didn't know to the certain extent to which they can hurt people and really, you know, just damage a person's life. So that's been life-changing, you know, just taking in that information and being able to communicate it with other people in my life too, to protect them, and hopefully they spread it out to others as well. I feel like my favorite part has definitely been the policy work with the schools though, because I feel like just during those sessions is when I thrive the most. My mind is racing with ideas on how to help these kids, because I mean, I'm basically in that situation, you know, I'm 19, so it's kind of affecting me too, you know, but that's something that I've always wanted to do, is just help people. And so it's been a great summer program with regards to, you know, the policy work. That's been my favorite so far. But I guess the thing that I didn't expect most out of this was probably the community that we were going to create, you know, with the mentors, with Justin, Coach Crump, with Michael, and all the guys in the meeting. You know, I didn't come into this expecting it to be such an open place, and, you know, people just expressing how they feel, you know, ideas they have in their mind, just being very open. And I feel like that's the biggest and best thing that's come from this program, is that we've all felt comfortable in there. You know, all young men of color, we've all felt real trustful with each other, and we've shared some, you know, some deep things, some things we probably never told with other people, but it's been a very memorable experience, and I recommend it to anyone, man. You know, I'm blessed to have been in this program and to keep going these next couple of weeks. I'm excited to see what else we learn, you know, what else I can learn from these men, what else I can share with them to hopefully, you know, help them in their situations. But yeah, man, Brother Be Well it's been crazy, and I'm very blessed and grateful to have been a part of this, and I'm gonna be sad when it ends. Well, yeah, so